My name is Bill. Welcome to the Night Terrors Weekend Show. If you truly appreciate real-life cartographic journeys into the void, do not even think of missing tonight's episode. Mysterious gaps on Google Maps. Google Earth offers satellite imagery of every place on Earth. But for certain areas, those images are suspiciously absent. Tonight, we will find out why those places are being hidden from the public by Google. And we're starting right now here at atlasobscura.com. We have an article by Meg Van Hoyen entitled, "Sorry We Have No Imagery Here. When Google Earth Goes Blind." Allow cookies. Here's Dubai's coastal expansion. Oh, that's pretty cool. Since its debut, starts the author, Google Earth has been kind of a double-edged sword. It's a stupefying modern marvel, more or less indispensable to those who use it. Even a decade after its release, the idea that we have the ability to navigate just about any terrain in the whole world, places we'll never even come close to personally seeing, is still pretty jaw-dropping. But by the same token, how much of ourselves do we want to be seen? And who is looking? It seems that some folks have been less than thrilled at suddenly being so accessible to the public. As such, Google Earth began displaying censored versions of certain locations. Censored versions. It started with government requests. When the site first launched in 2005, the images provided of the White House and the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. were obfuscated. They're not any longer. Following suit, the governments of several countries talked with Google about censoring specific sites, among them India and Australia. Meanwhile, somewhat ingeniously, the government of Malaysia went the opposite route and realized that it would reveal its sensitive locations if they were visibly censored, so it chose to leave them unblurred. But then things opened up a little. A house in Arkansas that was photographed by Google Street View while it was on fire in 2008 is no longer visible. You can see the smoke in the sky in Street View nearby, but direct Street View access to the house itself, along with approximately three blocks in its area, is now unavailable. In the same year, the city of North Oaks, Minnesota, requested that Google remove all imagery of its streets because the land there is privately owned, and Google complied. Today, anyone can file to have just about any location blurred in Street View. And plenty of people have had their requests honored by Google. Some censored locations are private properties that are open to the public, like amusement parks or racetracks. Some are fast food joints. Some are governmental, such as nuclear facilities or air bases. Some are entire islands. Some are just regular people's houses. And some are both governmental and residential, like the Dutch royal palaces. Here are a few of the more compelling examples. The Marcoule nuclear site in Chouslan, France. An enormous atomic energy site in the south of France. Marsoul works with plutonium and uranium oxides and was the scene of an explosion in 2011. It's no real mystery as to why this one is censored. Then you get Severnaya Zemlya in the Russian Arctic. A reasonably large archipelago in the high Russian Arctic, comprising 14,000 square miles. Severnaya Zemlya was often not even included on maps until surveyor Boris Velitsky led an Arctic Ocean expedition in 1913 to explore them. This despite the fact the archipelago was easily visible from the Siberian mainland. The islands were named after elements of the Russian Revolution. Bolshevik Island, Komsomolets Island, and so on, although that may or may not be connected to their obscurity. No one lives on Severnaya Zemlya, and the jury seems out on why the land is censored. But censored it is, in possibly one of the most severe and obviously intentional cases on Google Earth. Even if the northernmost island didn't look like it had been drawn freehand in MS Paint, that giant gray bar would definitely seem to be hiding something. Vocal Airbase Uden, Netherlands. That's the one with the camouflage. Here's another dramatic censoring. Belonging to the Royal Netherlands Air Force, Vocal Airbase has been rumored to have nukes stored within it since the 1960s. And this was finally confirmed by former Dutch Prime Minister Ruud Lubbers in 2013. Koninklijk Palace Amsterdam, the Royal Palace of Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. Several other buildings related to the Dutch royal family, including the Koninklijk Palace in Amsterdam, the family's residence, are pixelated on Google Earth. Place 10 Bosch, as well as the royal stables, have also been similarly inaccessible at times. Similarly. What's curious about the obscuring of Koninklijk Palace is how someone sat and lovingly, carefully blurred out every single pixel along the border of the building's roof, rather than slapping a huge gauge pixel mask over the whole thing, as the Dutch seem wont to do. It seems not very obscured. Let's check out what they mean. Open image. Yeah, so these are the regular resolution over here. And this is just slightly pixelated over here. That's how they're attempting to hide it, I guess. It is kind of a light case of blurring, indeed. Chekhov, near Moscow, Russia. Chekhov's the name of a town. A city of 60,000 in the Moscow Oblast, and the seat of Oblast Chekhovsky District. Chekhov's rows are perfectly visible from Google Street View, but not so when you switch to the bird's eye view. Zooming in does not help. No one seems to know why it's blurred. A satellite malfunction, or perhaps it's unintentional. It's hard not to notice that the high resolution of the much smaller village of Chudanovo, only 5.5 kilometers to the east, stands in sharp contrast to the hazy layout of Chekhov. Somewhat relatedly, it's rumored that the nearby Russian General Staff wartime command post, located underground, is connected to the Kremlin by way of an underground Russian Federal Security Service train, the Moscow Metro 2 line. Could that be a factor in not wanting the town to be visible by air? The Faroe Islands, Denmark, North Atlantic Ocean. A fair chunk of the islands in the autonomous archipelago country of the Faroes are fuzzed out, including the old World War II military base on the island of Vajar. However, it's possible that Google Earth just didn't bother zeroing in because outside of the country's capital, Tórshavn, there's not much going on up there. You know, in the way of people. T-Ceratops with the super chat. Thank you, T-Ceratops. Another interesting video, Bill, says T-Ceratops. Always look forward to it. Thank you, Bill, and community for being so great. Thank you for your support, T-Top. There's not so much going on up there, you know, in the way of people. Still, it seems like it'd be conscientious to at least get the borders sharpened out on the satellite view. Gabakovo Power Plant, Gabakovo, Slovakia. The switchyard of power plant near Gabakovo in Slovakia is obscured for perhaps sensible reasons, but in an interesting way. It's a composite image of a grass field slapped over the yard, with patterns repeated. It blends in nicely if you really look. This I gotta see. So here it is, this rectangle right here with the red marker in the middle. That's where it's being blocked out. So there's a industrial complex under this field. That is interesting the way they did it. So you can hardly see it. It even cuts off part of the road there, see? Here you can see the trees on this side of the road, and that side of the road goes right underneath it, where everything's a field. But it's not. It's a complex. Let's check out some art. In 2019, on June the 27th, an event was posted on American Facebook. The name of the event was Storm Area 51. They can't stop all of us. It was scheduled for September 20th. Surrounded by desert, Area 51 is a highly classified Air Force facility inside the Nevada test range. Facebook users were inspired to band together and raid the site in search for the extraterrestrial life quarantined by the U.S. government. The Facebook page received responses from 1.5 million people who said they were interested. But more people than that responded they were actually going. More than 2 million people committed online to attending the Area 51 raid.
And we're asking people
if they're going to the Area 51 raid.
I'm gonna go.
You gonna go?
Yeah.
You gotta get there?
In September, yeah.
Where's everybody meeting up? Do you know?
It's a secret. Are you going?
I can't commit to it yet.
Oh.
Yeah. Are you just gonna like jump over the fence? So like, what's the plan?
No,
like,
we're gonna do some spy stuff.
Oh, and night goggles?
Yeah, night vision goggles, the most important thing.
Are you going?
I'm not going. But there's like 2 million people that's supposed to go.
I know. Do you think there's one in Canada? Area 51 Canada?
Yes, for sure.
No, I'm not fucking going. Am I a fucking moron? Like, no, I'm not doing that.
No.
If you're gonna raid Area 51, do you want to fucking put it all over Facebook?
Yeah, no, that's what
And like put it all over the internet and be like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, do this. How fucked up would it be if like just aliens came down and destroyed our fucking world? And like, what the fuck do you do? There's not nice aliens!
Ow!
They're not nice! They're fucking mean!
Do you believe in aliens?
Yes, I believe in aliens.
Because it can't be just us.
No.
Right?
I think the world is too big, and we know just the top of the iceberg. I think we don't know what we don't know, you know?
So there must be like something outside us. There must be.
What I'm gonna do with my alien when I get it.
But what are you gonna do with alien again?
She's gonna fucking punch it in the face.
What if it's a nice alien?
Well then, I don't know, buy her dinner.
You get the alien to buy you dinner. That's what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. She's not buying an alien dinner, not a chance.
What if he's like antisocial?
If the alien is antisocial, the alien and I will be antisocial together. The alien might not even like you, or you might not even like the alien.
I'd be lucky if the alien likes me.
Are
you gonna fuck your alien?
Maybe, who knows? I'm not counting it out yet.
Yeah, exactly.
I am Area 51.
You're an alien.
Yeah. I started it. You know, I have people that I met, and they transitioned me into this body. Men in Black 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not how we are. We're a little different.
Here at Bellingcat.com is an article entitled The Mysterious Disappearance of Jeanette Island on Google Maps, written by Noreen Kashatrian. Now here's what it looks like on Google Earth. That's the island right there, Jeanette Island. And here's an account of Jeanette Island written on 4chan. It's written by Anonymous, And it begins, all right, I'm going to share with you something very disturbing, which I found out about a small, obscure Russian island called Jeanette Island. I come from Poland, but I have extended family spread over Eastern Europe, including Russia. My aunt put a lot of effort into tracing our family, and we made contact with my grandfather's brother's children, who were relocated to Siberia several generations ago and stayed there, now living in a small town called Xarka. We got in touch by way of mail, and I was encouraged to become pen pals with my Siberian cousin, who happened to be only 1.5 years older than me, to improve my Russian. Although I soon found out he speaks decent Polish, because his family took care to preserve some Polish culture throughout the years. That's a lot of care. Anyway, we would send a couple of letters a year, and when he was 17, he joined the Russian Navy, because there was hardly any other work around. His letters became more rare, but more interesting after this. He would tell me about how they did exercises, simulating an American attack, the parts of the world he got to see, and the things he and his friends did to keep entertained on sometimes months-long stretches on the sea. He first mentioned Jeanette Island in 1996, in a letter telling me he's been deployed on exercise in the East Siberian Sea. He wrote he was excited because it's a region very rarely visited by anyone, and islands such as Jeanette Island have not even been explored properly, and he was hoping they would set foot on one of those islands. I did not hear from him for 2 years after that letter, despite writing to him regularly. That's from Anonymous in 2017. Here's one dated, well, it's on the same date, too, 30th of October. Wait, how could that be? Monday, 30th of October, 2017. Can't be Monday, 30th. Oh, wait, I see it. It's not a different date. It's the same date. Anyway, it looks like he's continuing his tale, it looks like. When I received a letter from him in 2002, I was surprised. I didn't think he had passed away or anything, but figured he got bored or was too busy or forgot about me. The first thing I noticed was his handwriting had deteriorated quite noticeably. His hand seemed shaky and he made frequent spelling mistakes, something he rarely did in the past. I've translated this letter, and this is what it said. It's been a very long time since I've written to you. So much has changed. It feels like a lifetime. I have been juggled from institution to institution for the past 5 years, each one trying to make me feel like I've gone mad, that the things I've seen were not real. I know they are real. I played along, so they let me out, but I know. They're keeping them on Jeanette Island. It's absolutely disgusting what they do to them. It's even hard to imagine. We are not alone. We have not been alone for years. I know this means nothing to you, but I know censors check my letters. I can't write to you what I want to tell you. Send me your telephone number, or better, call me. He then put down a phone number which I've tried to call several times, but no one has ever picked up. For a while, for several weeks, I tried calling it every week. And then it was picked up. All I heard was static, but whoever was on the line didn't hang up for a good 3 minutes of me trying to get across to them. I've moved on with my life, but it's been at the back of my mind for a long time. I had a look at Google Maps, and if you try to zoom in on the island, the satellite picture has been blacked out. What the heck is going on here? And he doesn't say heck. And here we have another one from the same author, evidently, which says, extraterrestrials on Jeanette Island confirmed. Here's another, looks like another Anon, suggests that Google Maps blurred out the island due to the presence of a military base or a missile silo. Another person says it's probably either a radar station, an airfield, a missile base, or some combination of all three. Or it's a naval station for nuclear submarines. Russians like to scatter bases everywhere, as they did during the Cold War, so they could continue to fight after receiving a death blow. I didn't realize that was their plan. Soviet planning didn't see a way to survive American nuclear attack after the mid-70s, so they just planned to preserve enough force to attack back and prevent occupation of surviving regions by destroying their neighbors as well. Here's another one from Anonymous. The real Jeanette Island. While the real Jeanette Island may be shrouded by mystery on both Google Maps and 4chan, the island is actually open for expeditions and visitors, as evidenced by a number of reports and photos of it posted online. Though you cannot see the island from the sky on Google, you can from the ground on the Russian social network Vkontakte, or VK, Vkontakte, thanks to a user who uploaded an album of photographs he took on the island 12 years ago. Judging by the photos, it is not home to any secret military base, or it wasn't 12 years ago. What does the top say? If you are browsing around Google Maps and for some reason looking at islands in the East Siberian Sea, you will come across something peculiar, a nightmarish black blob covering up what should be a landmass named Jeanette Island. This island in reality is quite small, at only 3 square kilometers, and part of the Long Island archipelago in the East Siberian Sea. The uninhabited island was not discovered until the late 19th century, during the Jeanette expedition, which tried unsuccessfully to reach the North Pole through the Bering Strait. Though the history of Jeanette Island is as brief as it is uninteresting, the peculiar way that Google Maps renders it has led to a plethora of conspiracy theories, ranging from the involvement of aliens to secret deals from President Obama. Missing and incomplete data on mapping services is not an uncommon occurrence, of course. In some cases, areas are censored or obscured on satellite imagery intentionally. There is a fascinating Wikipedia article listing a number of locations with intentionally or unintentionally censored or blurred locations. There are a number of locations with blurred locations. Blurred images, let's say, with intentionally or unintentionally censored or blurred images. The reason for obscuring some of these are self-evident. There are nuclear power plants, prisons, etc., while other decisions to obscure maps are political. All of Israel and Palestine, thanks to U.S. legislation. There are hence a few questions worth asking with regard to Jeanette's disappearance. Was the blacking out of the island intentional, or is it some sort of glitch? What can we find out about this island online, both from reliable sources, and to put it mildly, ones that are not? Aliens, a military base, or secret intelligence facilities? One of the things that may catch your eye when researching the island is the low rating it has on Google. Did people actually visit this uninhabited island and for some reason were unsatisfied with their stay? Jeanette Island, here's the rating on Google, 2.5 stars out of 5. As it turns out, most of the bad reviews are due to the fact that the island is hidden on Google Earth. Other reviewers are suspicious that Russian President Vladimir Putin is up to no good there, hatching evil plans for Jeanette Island. I think there's some Obama theories down here as well. Obama giveaway, again from someone on 4chan. A lot of people call themselves anonymous. It's the most common user handle there. So this could be anybody, but it says it's from anonymous. Oil-rich islands of Alaska to Russia as part of Obama's war against U.S. energy independence. Includes a foreign aid program that directly threatens Alaska's sovereign territory and your land and mine. Obama's State Department is giving away 7 strategic resource-laden Alaskan islands to the Russians. Yes, to the Putin regime in the Kremlin. Now, I can't testify as to the accuracy of this claim. Here's another one with an Obama theory. Mr. Obama sold some oil-rich islands to the Russians. I think if that had happened, that a lot more people would know about it. So I'm not believing it so far. Those are blacked-out refineries, and that is Jeanette Island, one of the islands included in the deal. I have some friend in my government, and they give me free information. Yeah, no, I can't testify as to the veracity of these claims at Anonymous. I believe this up here with the disappearing Russian sailor more than I believe these two conspiracy theories here. And that's all they are, is conspiracy theories. Big Al One says it's not true. I live here. Thank you, Big Al One. Up in Alaska, evidently. Okay, let's check out some art.
My crew and I had just landed in Roswell, New Mexico. But that was not the worst of it. My crew lay dead, badly burned, all around the spacecraft, and my disintegration tools, the one we used to erase all traces of our presence in these situations, was badly damaged. The worst was that I was alive, and I had no way of getting out of there. I crawled out of what was left of the spacecraft and dragged myself to a nearby ditch. Morning came and one terrestrial showed up. Needless to say, a couple of hours later, all heck turned loose. They came by the hundreds, the terrestrials. They found me and got the scare of their lives. I was laughing, but at the same time, I was terrified. They tied me up and put me in one of those primitive aircrafts and took me away to a shiny building. They started photographing me in every angle. Then they started inserting needles into me. Felt like hurting them bad, but I controlled myself. They were asking all kinds of questions in their language, but I pretended I didn't understand. I communicated with them using a bit of telepathy and answered a few of their questions. Many years passed in Earthlings' time, which for us was just a couple of months. They agreed to let me go when the rescue party arrived. I could see through the window how much they had changed. Of course, I didn't say anything to my peers about the little tips I had given the terrestrials. They were amazed at how fast these primitive people were going into the future. Until then, let your imagination run wild. We'll get there.
Here's an article at uberxunderground.com. Their motto, explore everything. And it's an article written by Urbex Underground entitled 12 Google Maps Secret Locations with Coordinates. And the author begins, we live in an age where you literally have the world in the palm of your hand. You can explore the entire planet from the comfort of your home. But there are some Google Map secrets that were never meant to have been photographed. Here are 12 of them, and places that you can explore for yourself. Click the coordinates to view each location, or check out the maps below. China. Number 1 on our list might surprise you. It's the entire country of China. Go to any place in China on Google Maps, and you'll see that none of the roads line up. This isn't a glitch in the Matrix, but a design by the Chinese government to keep the exact location of their country obscured. The location of their country? The location of their landmarks, maybe? If you were in China and had a GPS in your camera, your geotagging feature likely would not work. Companies like Google and Fujitsu comply with China's requests and use an altered version of the GPS system that is not 100% correct. Due to national security concerns, surveying and mapping in China is illegal and can cost you up to $75,000 in fines. What are you in for? Oh, you know, making maps of China. So no roads line up here, huh? That's weird. It's hard to see exactly what they're talking about at this level. But China does more than just mess up their maps a little bit. There's a method to the madness, more like an algorithm. Before any public maps are published, a secret formula is applied that offsets certain parts of the map by varying degrees. There's a name for this system. It's commonly known as Mars coordinates. If you visit Hong Kong, you'll notice all the roads appear correct, and that's because that country uses true GPS coordinates. Things get even more confusing when crossing into China from Hong Kong. Roads suddenly shift when entering the country, and this can leave visitors confused. Russian hexagonal warehouses. Is there a closer view? There's a closer view right here. There, look, check that out. Deep in an unnamed forest in the heart of Russia is a series of strange buildings that were once obscured. On the ground, you may never notice these warehouses, but from the air, their spacing creates an eye-catching pattern. Who would build this far into the woods? And why would they space these buildings out so evenly? Let's take a closer look. This facility sits isolated down a single stretch of road that's nearly 1 mile long. At the end of the road are a few buildings and what appears to be a guard shack or a checkpoint. Notice the high double fencing surrounding the entire property. Whatever this place is, they did a good job of hiding it in the woods, but not so much from above. The carved perimeter in the trees makes this place pop out from hundreds of feet in the air, and the odd arrangement of their warehouses contrasts the forest around the property. So what is this place? The author writes, my guess, it's military storage facility, or something that's highly explosive. The warehouses are likely spaced out to avoid causing a chain reaction and leveling the whole forest if something went wrong. Yeah, they are. They're placed so they can be farthest away from each other. Isn't that interesting? Explosives. The Princeport Roadhouse. There's an unassuming house on Princeport Road in the tiny town of Teesside. But that doesn't seem so odd. However, if you go on Google Street View and try to look at the house, Google will not let you. For years, this house, and only this house, has been censored by Google. You just can't look at it. Why? No one knows why it's censored. Not even the owner of the home, who has lived there since the year 2000. Was someone doing something nasty in one of the windows, or is there more to this house than we know about? They could have just blocked off one window. UFO crash site. Wow. Yeah, that I got to get a close look at. The UFO crash site. Look at that, will ya? Isn't that something? Cool. Almost looks like My Favorite Martian spacecraft. Kind of oblong. You couldn't map out the entire Earth and not capture at least one UFO, right? Well, people think they found the crash site of a flying saucer on the plains of South Africa. In the middle of the field, you can make out what appears to be a flying saucer angled on its side, as if it slid in after a crash landing. Trees appear to be growing around it now, and a well-worn dirt path leads right to it. Unlike the rooftops in the nearby villages, this does appear to be metallic, at least in the aerial shot. Either way, we want to see the extraterrestrials. Mysterious China symbols. Circling back to China, there are two strange symbols etched into a mountain in the Gobi Desert. These are two symbols. Oh, okay. These symbols don't appear to be in any specific language or have any meaning behind them. The mysterious China lines are huge, measuring in at over a mile across. Looking closer, They don't seem to go anywhere or lead to anything, almost as if the lines are meant to be kind of a message. Between the two massive symbols, it's clear there is activity present, likely military. You can find small craters from bomb testing, and even dirt roads that disappear underground. Does anyone really know what these things are? Oh, there's the other one right there, I guess. Well, scientists who have studied the area are pretty sure they are calibration sites for Chinese spy satellites. Satellites who lost their way would orient themselves towards the large mountain range and then find and lock onto the calibration sites. Since the sites are so large, this indicates that the satellites are low resolution. The U.S. used similar markings for their Corona spy satellites in the 1960s. In the Casa Grande mountain range are two concrete white crosses that are about 60 feet in diameter, a lot smaller and less impressive than the mile-long lines in China, but still very odd to stumble across. Ethereal Warrior says, that looks like a QR code. Orano La Hague. There's a complex that's nearly 2 miles long, and it's completely pixelated out. For good reason. Orano La Hague is a massive recycling plant. Not for beer cans and plastic bags, but for nuclear fuel. As you can imagine, taking something as hazardous as nuclear waste and recycling it safely must be a massive undertaking. Keeping a 2-mile-long campus secure is also a challenge. So it's no wonder they don't want people snooping at their rooftops. Or snoofing either. GROM headquarters. Is it going to tell us what GROM stands for? No, it doesn't. Just says it's Poland's Special Forces. If you're scrolling around eastern Warsaw in Poland, you may come across a group of buildings that look like a blurry blob compared to the city nearby. This is no accident. This is the GROM headquarters, basically Poland's Special Forces buildings. GROM evidently stands for Thunderbolt in Polish, so you know these guys mean business. But it's not just their name. This is the same group that rescued a number of CIA agents who were trapped in Operation Desert Storm back in 1991. Whatever goes on there, they don't want nosy people snooping around from the sky to find out. Brooklyn blackout. Just like the Princeport house, there's another house in Brooklyn that is mysteriously blacked out. You can see the blurriness right there. No one really knows why, and the neighbors nearby appear unaffected. Is this a random glitch that sometimes blocks houses? Is the owner in witness protection? If you find out, be sure to let me know, writes the author. Aha, yuck yuck. Let's look at some art. There's a story at BuzzFeedNews.com. Written by 3 authors. First time for that. Allison Keating, Megha Rajagopalan, and Christo Bushek. In a story entitled Blanked Out Spots on China's Map, helped us uncover Xinjiang's camps. Subtitled, China's Baidu blanked out parts of its mapping platform. We used those locations to find a network of buildings bearing the hallmarks of prisons and internment camps in Xinjiang. Here's how we did it. In the summer of 2018, as it became even harder for journalists to work effectively in Xinjiang, a far western region of China, we started to look at how we could use satellite imagery to investigate the camps where Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities were being detained. At the time we began, it was believed that there were around 1,200 camps in existence, but only several dozen had been found. We wanted to try to find the rest. Our breakthrough came when we noticed that there was some sort of issue with the satellite imagery tiles loading in the vicinity of one of the known camps, while using the Chinese mapping platform Baidu Maps. The satellite imagery was old, but otherwise fine when zoomed out. But at a certain point, plain light gray tiles would appear over the camp's location. They disappeared as you zoomed in further, while the satellite imagery was replaced by the standard gray reference tiles, which showed features such as building outlines and roads. At that time, Baidu only had satellite imagery at medium resolution in most parts of Xinjiang, which would be replaced by their general reference map tiles when you zoomed in closer. That wasn't what was happening here. These light gray tiles at the camp location were a different color than the reference map tiles and lacked any drawn information such as roads. We also knew that this wasn't a failure to load tiles or information missing from the map. Usually when a map platform cannot display a tile, it serves a standard blank tile, which is watermarked. These blank tiles are also a darker color than the tiles we had noticed over the camps. Once we found that we could replicate the blank tile phenomenon reliably, we started to look at other camps whose locations were already known to the public to see if we could observe the same thing happening there. Spoiler, we could. Of the 6 camps we used in our feasibility study, 5 had blank tiles at their location at zoom level 18 in Baidu. Appearing only at this zoom level and disappearing as you zoomed in further. One of the 6 camps did not have blank tiles. A person who had visited the site in 2019 said it had closed, which could well have explained it. However, we later found that the blank tiles were not used in city centers, only toward the edge of cities and in more rural areas. Baidu did not respond to repeated requests for comment. Having established that we could probably find internment camps in this way, we examined Baidu's satellite tiles for the whole of Xinjiang, including the blank masking tiles, which formed a separate layer on the map. We analyzed the masked locations by comparing them to up-to-date imagery from Google Earth, the European Space Agency's Sentinel Hub, and Planet Labs. In total, there were 5 million masked tiles across Xinjiang. They seem to cover any area of even the slightest strategic importance. Military bases, military training grounds, prisons, power plants, but also mines, and some commercial and industrial facilities. There were far too many locations for us to sort through, so we narrowed it down by focusing on the areas around cities and towns and major roads. Prisons and internment camps need to be near infrastructure. Excuse me. You need to get large amounts of building materials and heavy machinery there to build them, for starters. Chinese authorities would have also needed good roads and railways to bring the newly detained people there by the thousand, as they did in the early months of the mass internment campaign. Analyzing locations near major infrastructure was therefore a good way to focus our initial search. This left us with around 50,000 locations to look at. We began to sort through the mass tile locations systematically, using a custom web tool that we built to support our investigation and help manage the data. We analyzed the whole of Kashgar Prefecture, the Uyghur heartland, which is in the south of Xinjiang, as well as parts of the neighboring prefecture, Kitsizlu, in this way. After looking at 10,000 mask tile locations and identifying a number of facilities bearing the hallmarks of detention centers, prisons, and camps, we had a good idea of the range of designs of these facilities, and also the sorts of locations in which they were likely to be found. We quickly began to notice how large many of these places are, and how heavily securitized they appear to be compared to the earlier known camps. In site layout, architecture, and security features, they bear greater resemblance to other prisons across China than to the converted schools and hospitals that formed the earlier camps in Xinjiang. The newer compounds were also built to last, in a way that the earlier conversions were not. The perimeter walls are made of thick concrete, for example, which takes much longer to build, and perhaps later to demolish, than the barbed wire fencing that characterized the early camps. In almost every county, we found buildings bearing the hallmarks of detention centers, plus new facilities with the characteristics of large, high-security camps and/or prisons. Typically, there would be an older detention center in the middle of the town, while on the outskirts, there would be a new camp and prison, often in the recently developed industrial areas. Where we hadn't yet found these facilities in a given county, this pattern pushed us to keep on looking, especially in areas where there was no recent satellite imagery. Where there was no public high-resolution imagery, we used medium-res from Planet Labs and Sentinel to locate likely sites. Planet was then kind enough to give us access to the high-res imagery, and task a satellite to capture new imagery of some areas that had not been photographed in high-res since the year 2006. In one county, this allowed us to see that the detention center that had previously been identified by other researchers had been demolished. And we found a new prison just out of town. So they supposed that there were 1,200. That was what they thought. What did they end up finding? X out of this. They never tell you. Or do they? Wait a second. In total, we identified 428 locations in Xinjiang, bearing the hallmarks of prisons and detention centers. 428 new prisons, just for the Uyghurs, right? And other Muslim communities, native to China. Born there, born and bred there. Many of these locations contain 2 to 3 detention facilities, a camp, a pre-trial administrative detention center, or prison. We tended to analyze these locations further and make our database more granular over the next few months. Of these locations, we believe that 315, about 75%, are in use as part of the current internment program. Let's check out some art.
Just came across something I thought was kind of interesting that I thought was worth sharing. It's concerning Google Earth and this really interesting aircraft they have over at Dyess Air Force Base, and that's over in Texas. And if you zoom in here and go over here and check out this aircraft, but look at this right here. Look at it from different angles. There's something there. So it's like a claim is it's some kind of invisible aircraft. But they've certainly got, I mean, you can't, I mean, I think there's obviously something there. Right here, that's what I'm talking about.
Looking at some of these underwater views that Google is now posting on some of the updated images of Google Earth, I've found some very strange structures or what looks like roads. Can you see that? I don't know who would be doing underwater dredging, or looks like regular plots of housing developments. Here looks like what would have been an ancient riverbed. And up here you can actually see loops. This is not a natural formation of rocks.
That was one of the things I had heard about. Now the other one is in a place called Starbuck Island. I actually marked this UFO crash at Starbuck Island. What looks like some kind of markings of something's come down for landing here. See the markings right here? You follow that, and it looks like something came down to rest under the water down here. Can't really tell what it is, because it's under the water, but it's definitely scraped down right there.
And then off of Los Angeles, there was some other strange stuff. See that? This is all underwater. And there was another strange formation close by. There it is. And this was another strange formation underwater.
Here's an article at bigthink.com, written by Frank Jacobs, entitled Sandy Island, the last island to be undiscovered. Subtitle, If Phantom Islands Can Be Discovered as Recently as 2012, maybe there are still more of them out there. In 2012, the world lost an island and gained a phantom island. Losing islands is regrettable, but an increasingly common occurrence, what with rising sea levels. Gaining a phantom island, on the other hand, is an exciting event, especially since that particular category was considered extinct. Map lovers are under the assumption that scientific rigor and satellite technology had illuminated the shadows out of the cartographic twilight in which phantom islands thrive. The age of undiscovery had been closed for good, we thought. We thought wrong. A phantom island can be defined as an island once believed to exist and accordingly depicted on maps, but of which the existence was later disproved and its cartographic representation removed. These fallacies started infesting maps by the dozen during the Age of Discovery, when explorers sailing for regions unknown mistook their fevered ambitions or a random fog bank for islands that were not there. Some of these phantom islands lingered on maps for centuries, at least partly it seems, because they held such a great hold on the imagination of generation after generation of sailors. But eventually they were proven not to exist. Gone from today's maps are places with such captivating names as the Isle of Demons, Estadaland, the Island of 11,000 Virgins, and High Brazil. All of these and more were undiscovered, removed from nautical charts, and added to the select club of Phantom Islands. The most recent member of that club, as far as we could tell, was Sanikoff Land. It was presumed to lie in the Arctic Sea off Siberia, ever since the Russian explorer Yakov Sanikoff in 1811 reported a bluish fog to the northeast of the new Siberian islands. Distant mirages of the island were subsequently observed by the Baltic Baron Edward Toll in 1886 and 1893, before their false promise lured him to his death in 1902 on his third expedition. Finally, the Soviet icebreaker Sadko found only frozen sea where the island ought to be, relegating it to the Phantom Island Hall of Fame. That was in 1937. And that seemed to be the very end of the Age of Undiscovery. Cut to 21st November 2012, as the Australian research vessel Southern Surveyor puts into port at Brisbane after a 25-day exploration of the tectonic framework for the easternmost Coral Sea in the Pacific Ocean, between the eastern coast of Australia and the French territory of Nouvelle-Calédonie. The ship's crew, marine geologists from the University of Sydney, have a strange tale to tell. During their expedition, they noticed that the sea floor beneath an island in the French part of the Coral Sea is recorded as 4,600 feet deep, or almost 1.5 kilometers. That seemed odd, so they went and checked it out. The lens-shaped fleck of land, 15 miles from north to south and 3 miles across, is marked as Sandy Island on the ship's nautical charts and on Google Maps, and as Sable Island in the Times Atlas of the World. The Southern Surveyor approaches the island's supposed location with great care, lest it run aground. But the ship's instruments consistently indicate a depth of 4,600 feet, a little under 1.5 kilometers. Verpine, thank you for the super chat. Super V to the rescue. Much appreciated, sir. And when it arrives at the coordinates, there is no island, only ocean. How is this possible? Did Sandy Island perhaps fly away, like the fictional island of Laputa in Gulliver's Travels? With the benefit of hindsight, Sandy's Island's appearance on Google Maps, since removed, provides a clue to its non-existence. Its presence there was more of an absence, a black rift in the undulating blues of the Coral Sea, as if someone had punched a hole in the very fabric of Google Maps itself. It's hard to see how nobody, or more precisely no satellite, was able to spot this anomaly before. And it's incredible that it took a good old-fashioned look-see to discover Sandy Island's non-existence. For its supposed size was considerable. At 45 square miles, it would have been almost exactly double the size of Manhattan Island, which of course supports New York City. How did it find its way onto the maps? We just don't know, mused Dr. Maria Seaton, the expedition leader on board the Southern Surveyor. Early press reports mentioned that Sandy Island had been struck off some nautical charts, notably the French ones, but had appeared on others, including Australian ones, since at least the year 2000. Some experts opined that Sandy Island had been a relatively recent glitch, imported into cartographic databases when analog maps had been digitized. Perhaps an actual bug had been squished on the paper map, and it was picked up by the scanner as an island. It could explain the curious hole-in-the-map appearance of Sandy Island on Google Maps. Or could it be a trap island, analogous to the trap streets sprinkled across London's A to Z and other street maps to identify unauthorized copying, and to the detriment of all the map users. Both theories crumbled as much older maps of Sandy Island surfaced. A librarian in Auckland, New Zealand located it on a chart of the Pacific Ocean, published in 1908, but first compiled for 32 years earlier. The island was sighted in that year by the British vessel Velocity. The chart includes a warning that helps explain why it included even doubtful sightings of land. Is there a conclusion to this story? Let's start from here. That only deepens the mystery of Sandy Island, for it seems that Southern Surveyor's recent undiscovery was already the second time that the island's existence was disproved. In 2000, a group of radio amateurs headed to the Chesterfield Islands on a so-called D-expedition, hoping to find the remotest dry land possible from which to send a ham radio message. In order for the Chesterfields to qualify, they scoured its surroundings for land, found Sandy Island on the map, but not where it should be in the ocean. Perhaps because this allowed the radio amateurs to proceed with their uber nerdy expedition. Uber nerdy. It's uber nerdy. Their undiscovery of Sandy Island didn't receive as much worldwide attention as it merited. Which still leaves the question, when and by whom was Sandy Island first put on the map? Boy, I hope this video is going to answer our questions here. Let's take a look at some art.
Anyone who set foot on this island, quarantined for 50 years, was as good as dead. Grenard Island has a chilling history that might just make any would-be visitors head in the other direction. Situated just off the northwest coast of Scotland, it has a peaceful, picturesque quality to it. Unfortunately, a sad and shocking truth hides within those green hills, and it all starts with World War II. In the thick of the war, the fear of chemical attacks lingered in the back of each army's minds. The Nazis used concentration camps to develop nerve gases in secret, and the Japanese were no strangers to chemicals. British forces decided to develop a plan to fight back with a deadly chemical of their own, a substance known as anthrax. They needed a place where they could test it, however, and one official knew just the place. Officials requisitioned Grenard Island and went to work on chemical testing. To carry out the tests, researchers brought 80 sheep to the island and then set off spores filled with the highly infectious anthrax strain 578. The sheep began to die of the infection within mere days. Scientists concluded that a large release of anthrax in a German city would wipe out the population and make it uninhabitable for decades after. After the war ended in 1945, the original owner requested that Grenard Island be returned, but the government admitted that the terrain was so contaminated that it couldn't be released until it was cleaned up and declared safe for habitation by man and beast. So, when would that be? Maybe never. A massive decontamination project was deemed too expensive and dangerous, so the island was quarantined and closed to the public for the next several decades. No one could visit the island except for those who periodically returned to test its toxicity. By 1981, a team of microbiologists had had enough of the government's refusal to actively decontaminate the island. Under cover of night, they embarked on Operation Dark Harvest, stealing 300 pounds of soil samples from the island and threatening to leave them at strategic government facilities until the island was restored. Finally, the government made an effort to set things right. Officials sprayed formaldehyde mixed with seawater over the soil and removed toxic patches. Sometime later, they placed a flock of sheep on the island, all of which survived. On April 24, 1990, 4 years after the decontamination efforts and 48 years after the initial quarantine, Grenard Island was finally declared safe and free of anthrax. A week later, heirs of the initial owner purchased it back for the original sale price of 500 pounds. Not everyone is convinced that the biological danger on the island is over. Archaeologist Dr. Brian Moffat warns that anthrax is a highly resilient bacterium, stating, "I would not go walking on Grunard."
Here at thesun.com. Thank you, Rage Against the Machine. It's an article by Harry Petit and Charlotte Edwards entitled Out of Sight. Google Maps banned locations you're not allowed to see, including prisons and mystery Russian island. And the authors begin. Google Maps is on a quest to document every corner of the globe. But some spots are so secret that even Google cannot show them. From military bases to mysterious islands, there's no shortage of censored locations that the digital mapping service keeps hidden from users. For example, Prison de Montluçon, France. Montluçon. Prison de Montluçon. And there it is. A number of prisons around the globe are censored on Google Maps because they're considered sensitive locations. Montluçon prison in central France is one of the many clinks in France. Many clinks? Blurred by the digital mapping service. In 2018, France's government asked Google to pull all images of French prisons from the web. The order followed a daring escape from a prison near Paris that involved a helicopter that flew into its courtyard. It's thought that notorious killer Redouane Faïd and his accomplices used Google Maps to scout out the layout of Rayo prison. Moruroa, French Polynesia. Eldergon says one of the names of jail is the Clink. Yeah. I didn't know you spelled it with a C though. I don't know why I thought it was with a K. Moruroa. I can't even say rural, and now I gotta say Moruroa. Moruroa is a small atoll in the southern Pacific. It's not clear why much of the island is censored, but some suspect it relates to the island's nuclear history. France undertook significant nuclear testing on the atoll between 1966 and 1996, 30 years, with as many as 181 tests performed during the period. 2207 Seymour Avenue, Ohio. This censored house is the site of the infamous Ariel Castro kidnappings, which took place between 2002 and 2004 in Cleveland, Ohio. 3 young women were kidnapped by Castro and held captive in his home. They remained imprisoned until May of 2013. One of the women eventually escaped and alerted the police. Castro was jailed for life plus 1,000 years. But he performed self-harm just 1 month into his sentence. A house in Stockton-on-Tees. Princeport Road in Stockton-on-Tees plays host to a blurred house, and it's not clear why. It's not exactly clear why this house on Princeport Road in humble Stockton-on-Tees is blurred. Even resident Jane Allison has no idea, saying, "I've been in this house since the year 2000, but I have no idea why you can't see it. If you find out why, it would be nice to know," she said. Jeanette Island, Russia. Jeanette Island is a small island in the East Siberian Sea, measuring just 1.2 miles in length. Mainly covered by ice, it has an 1,100-foot peak in the center. It's not clear why the island is blurred, although there have been issues around whether the island belongs to Russia or the USA. A section to the left of North Korea is blurred on Google Maps. To the left of North Korea, or on the left of North Korea. Just type in the secretive country's name to look to the left, where you should see a whole section of mystery. Let's open this in open image, a new tab. So this area here, all blurred out. Probably still North Korea, probably. But maybe that's where they launched the test missiles from. Interesting. Amchitka Island, Alaska. Amchitka Island was the site of the U.S. underground nuclear testing in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. A quick search for it on Google Maps shows blurred out sections. The U.S. carried out its largest underground nuclear test at this location. It's currently under observation for any radioactive leakage and may become a limited access wildlife reserve in 2025. Greek military base. This military base in Athens is completely pixelated. It's never been explicitly explained why, but often this kind of blurring is related to national security. French nuclear facility. The Arriva La Hague nuclear fuel processing facility in France is significantly blurred. Opened up in 1976. It treats spent nuclear fuel from several countries around the world. It has faced controversy, however. Greenpeace has been campaigning for its shutdown for 9 years after claims that it dumps 1 million liters of liquid radioactive waste per day into the ocean. That would not be good. Polish Special Forces bases. The Dowodactwo Wojsk Specjalnych is the Special Forces Command, also known as the DWS. It was responsible for commanding and training Poland's special forces, although a different organization now handles this role. Its home remains blurred on Google Maps. Eldergone says Greenpeace has been irrelevant for a long time. Patio de los Naranjos, Spain. Patio? No idea. Place host to government buildings and is blocked out on Google Maps. Patio de los Naranjos, which translates to Orange Tree Yard, is an area in Almeria, Spain. It's not clear why the area is blurred on Google Maps, but it likely relates to the government buildings in the vicinity. Sandy Island, a phantom isle. Sandy Island is what's known as a phantom island. It was charted for over a century as being located near New Caledonia, a French territory, and has been included on many maps and nautical charts. It was first discovered and charted by Captain James Cook in September 1774, but was eventually undiscovered 202 years later in 1979. The island was displayed on Google Maps until November of 2012 when Australian scientists confirmed the island's absence. Now all that remains is a view of the rise in the seabed, which occupies the same shape as the original island. Thought they said that was a point where it was 1.5 kilometers to the seabed. And yet there's a rise underneath it. Is that it? That looks like it? Sweet. Let's look at some art.
Are you all together now? He asked. No, my daughter's in exile. After the war, we moved here and they arrested my husband for the second time. They took him to the camps. Your son was born in exile, he resumed. She nodded. And now you have to bring him up on your own salary, and nobody will give you a skilled job, and they hold your record against you everywhere, and you live in some hovel? If only living in a hovel was my only problem, she said. The trouble is, my boy's growing up. He's clever, he asks about everything. And how should I bring him up? Should I burden him with the whole truth? The truth's enough to sink a grown man, isn't it? It's enough to break your ribs. Or should I hide the truth and bring him to terms with life? Is that the right way? What would his father say? And would I succeed? After all, the boy's got eyes of his own, he can see. As a girl, she had made eyes and laughed and giggled, and no gypsy had ever foretold that she would end her life as a cleaning woman somewhere in Kazakhstan. But we aren't even allowed to know what's happening to them. Even if I went to Camp Lake, don't go, he said. It don't do any good. But when you were deported, what was it for? What was the charge? Why bother to think of a charge? Socially harmful, socially dangerous element. So it was easy, no trial necessary. And what about your husband? Who was he? He was a flute player in the Leningrad Philharmonic. He liked to talk when he had a few drinks. We knew one family with grown-up children, a son and a daughter, both Komsomol, Communist Youth Party members. Suddenly the whole family was put down for deportation. The children rushed to the Komsomol district office. Protect us, they said. Certainly we protect you, they were told. Just write on this piece of paper. As from today's date, I ask not to be considered the son, the daughter of such and such parents. I renounce them as socially harmful elements, and I promise in the future to have nothing whatever to do with them and to maintain no communication with them. Oleg slumped forward. Thousands of people signed letters just like that, he said. Yes, but this brother and sister said, we'll think about it. And they went home and threw their Komsomol cards into the stove and started to pack their things for exile. But what if during peacetime a lot of greatcoats and peaked caps burst into the house where you were born and ordered the whole family to leave the house and town in 24 hours with only what your hands can carry? You open your doors, you call in the passers-by from the streets and ask them to buy things from you or throw you a few pennies to buy bread with. Maybe it's enough what I've experienced. Where can people read about us? Us! She sat silent in the twilight, but he could hear her murmur several times, a line from Pushkin, "Not all of me shall die. Not all of me shall die."